in Seattle to meet Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft.
Prosperity really comes through innovation.
Once the richest billionaire on the planet.
Tell me about all your money. What do you spend it on?
Now a passionate philanthropist on a mission to rid the world of preventable diseases. We join Seattle's most successful son on a visit with his sisters to their childhood home.
Hey, Lib, how are you?
Hiya, good. He tells me about sneaking out at night to feed his obsession with early computing. That's it, he's out. Now Bill Gates is going back to his roots with a memoir about his origin story.
I loved how the computer forced me to think. It was completely unforgiving in the face of mental sloppiness.
He takes me to the school where he had access to a computer for the first time and got hooked on coding.
It was an obsession.
In the tech revolution that would end up changing all our lives, the kids became the experts. But what was Bill Gates actually like as a child? In a rare interview, his sisters tell me they always knew he was different.
He would like sit in his room and chew pencils down to the lead.
Good for you.
Their brother now believes if he was growing up today, he would probably be diagnosed on the autism spectrum. Do you suspect that neurodiversity is overrepresented in Silicon Valley leaders?
Oh, certainly.
And with Donald Trump back in the White House and the titans of tech accused of courting him, what plans does Bill Gates have to work with the president? This is Bill Gates on disinformation, partnering with Donald Trump, and being different. Bill Gates and his sisters haven't been back to their childhood home since their father died. It now has a different owner, but some things never change. Nice view.
Same view, it always has had a... Okay, so this is a very different layout.
Wow, no, this is completely different.
Did you have a lot of happy times here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, we are sitting here in your childhood home because you have written the first part of your memoir. It's your origin story. Why did you want to tell it now?
You know, I'm turning 70. Microsoft will be 50 years old. My foundation, 25 years old. So I thought, you know, looking back on what happened and, you know, the incredible luck I had with my parents, the school I went to, a couple of early friends that helped me see the software opportunity. And, you know, a lot of people don't know about the school I went to or why I happen to know a lot about computers, and including with Paul Allen, the insight that, you know, software would be this magic thing. And if we built a company that was the best at that, you know, we could do something pretty big.
Pretty big is an understatement. I want to find out how a group of school friends, his Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, and Gates's best friend Kent, before he was killed in a climbing accident, became the experts in the early days of computing. And how did Gates's family shape a challenging child who didn't fit the norm? I love these stories. Your mum set the clocks 8 minutes early so the family would always work to her time. When you went on a 1,000-mile car journey to Disneyland, you write, the 1,000 miles we were about to drive meant 1,000 chances for her kids to learn, and she made this travel log for you. I mean, some people might say that's not normal. How do you perceive it?
My mom pushed us to interact with adults and, you know, clearly had a model that we should be studious and well-behaved. You know, there might have been days where I thought, boy, she's sure giving me a hard time, but, you know, the sort of the crucible of my ambition somehow gets formed through that relationship. No matter how strong you are today, you better make sure you're listening to users and inventing great new technologies if you want to stay strong.
Windows 95 finally went on sale at the stroke of midnight.
Did you want to be that computer genius? Or actually back then were you thinking, I'd rather just be one of the popular kids who gets to be popular with the girls?
I certainly envied the kids who had more natural social or athletic skills than I had. Once I found my niche of kind of being the smart math guy, it was nice that I'd walk them to a room and they'd say, okay, there's the math guy. And I could fit that role pretty well. I also felt like I didn't fit in with the other kids. I was small and skinny and had an unusually high-pitched, squeaky voice.
There's a really shocking bit actually in the book where you talk about how you're sent to a speech counsellor, and the speech counsellor recommends that your parents hold me back, and they use the word retarded, which obviously now, as you say, is a dated and offensive word, but back then was, as you say, a term applied to kids who didn't seem to fit in the classroom. But it is really shocking to hear that word used about you.
Well, in the same year that they say, hey, you've got all this energy, maybe you should be held back, the same year they're saying, no, maybe you should be pushed ahead even 2 grades because my math would have placed me there. So I knew that adults were a little in a quandary and even sort of negative connotations of some of the things they're saying. Overall, the adults were very, very nice to me. It's still a pretty idyllic childhood.
You say now you think you would probably be diagnosed on the autism spectrum. Have you had a formal diagnosis?
No, I have not.
Do you plan to?
No, I mean, it's not like there's some medicine that, when you get this diagnosis, you take it and then, your social skills are fantastic. And, I'm not sure I'd want that. I think I wouldn't because, the positive characteristics for my career have been more beneficial than the deficits have been a problem for me.
Revealing his neurodiversity is a big moment for Gates, but it's only one of many factors he believes led him to success. Playing cards with his grandmother as a kid is another. He credits her with teaching him to outthink the competition. Who was the most competitive of you 3? Or were you all?
We all are.
What are your memories of Bill?
He was sort of introverted, basically, and he spent a lot of time thinking.
Did you feel protective of him?
Yes, I would say I did, yes.
I didn't ever feel like I was an annoying younger sister, even though I probably was.
No, you were fun.
And, he'd play ping pong downstairs with his friends, and I'd be hanging out. Sometimes they'd let me play. No, he was really nice.
Did you ever resent the attention that your brother got?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yes.
And why was that? What was happening?
It's like, because he consumed my mother's life, basically.
How do you feel, Bill, knowing that Christy felt like that you were taking up all the attention now as an adult when you look back on that?
No, I know that my sort of being over energetic, both when I was doing things well and when I was doing things poorly, commanded attention.
I would never describe, I think you were over energetic mentally, a lot going on, but I wouldn't suggest, to me, sometimes when people say over energetic, you think about a kid who's just like all over the place doing everything, and that's not how at least I would describe you. So I think you're talking about how you had a lot of energy for thinking about things and planning things and doing things in your head.
Yeah, part of what he talks about in the book is about potentially, these days he might be diagnosed as on the spectrum in terms of autism, but did you have any sense back then of how he seemed different?
Yeah. I mean, he was not a normal kid. He would like sit in his room and chew pencils down to the lead, which...
Good for you.
That's why he's so strong.
I think that's been proven.
And when he was doing that, what were you thinking? Was that just normal?
Like why? It's like, this is really stupid. You could kill yourself eating lead.
You couldn't stop him.
No.
Did you try and stop him?
He was pretty set on what he was doing.
He was in his room all the time and staying up till all hours of the night. And I mostly remember my parents' frustration with trying to get him out of his room, trying to get him up in the morning, trying to get him to places on time. And, you know, I have to say, I think given what we know now, the things that my mom and dad did to encourage him as somebody who now might be seen as on the spectrum were pretty amazing.
Like what?
They did things that you would probably tell parents to today, like encouraging sociability, team sports, you know,
The Boy Scouts.
the Boy Scouts.
And did it come as a surprise to you when your brother, if he said at some point, presumably before writing the book, I think I'm going to say this, I think this may be what I am? Did it come as a surprise?
No, not to me. I'm a therapist, so it didn't come as a surprise to me.
Okay.
I mean, the surprise was more his willingness to say, I think this might be the case.
Do you suspect that neurodiversity is overrepresented in Silicon Valley leaders?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, learning something in great depth is, you know, at a young age, that helps you in certain complex subjects. This is the other Lakeside programming person besides Kent and me and Paul, is a guy named Rick Weiland. So you can see these guys are 2 years older than me. And, you know, it looks like I'm their son or something.
It does.
I mean, you know, I'm small, I've got my freckles, my blonde hair.
No visit to Seattle with Bill Gates would be complete without stopping off at his old school, Lakeside, where computing became an obsession.
These were wonderful years for me. I mean, this is where I meet Kent Evans and Paul Allen. This is where I learn about computers. The school deserves credit. It was their mother's club that had a rummage sale that put the money to this bizarre idea of having a terminal that you could call in to a big computer. And at first the teachers tried to figure it out. It was kind of confusing and they made some mistakes. So then there were 4 students, myself, Kent, Paul, and Rick, who just were there day and night. We got to use computers when almost nobody else did.
This is, well, it's called the Shrine.
Oh, well, they kept some of the stuff from the computer room. That's not actually a computer, but it connects over a phone line to a computer. And so you would prepare your program and then call into the computer. And initially, we're just kind of figuring out how to use it. Later, the school asked me to do this scheduling of all the classes. And so I'm sitting at this teletype writing the code that figured out when all the classes would meet. So I spent a lot of time on that teletype.
You spent hours and hours, did you?
Yes, hundreds of hours. It was an obsession that I wanted to understand programming. And through a series of experience, I got to work with people who were really good at programming, which in those days, that was super, super rare.
And could you ever have imagined, when you were on that machine, where it would take you in the end?
Not really. When we saw that these chips were going to keep getting better, we thought, oh man, this is going to change the world. Why don't other people see it? And we said we wanted to be part of it. But the idea that a gigantic company would come out of that, no, that was beyond our imagination.
You wanted so much, you wanted access to that computer. You'd be leaving the home when your parents didn't know. Just tell me about that.
Yeah, so initially the high school gives us some access. And then the money for that ran out. And then we had a company that if we could find problems with their computer, they would let us play with it because it delayed their having to pay for it. And that was a few miles from this childhood home. So late at night, I would leave, either walk a couple miles or go connect up with the bus route and go over there.
And the way to do that was to climb out the window.
Well, that's the way to not be detected. My room is down here. Basically, yeah, this room right here, I could kind of sneak out, and there's a way to just walk out. So you're not, my parents lived upstairs, wouldn't see it at all, so I could go up, use the computer, and then sneak back in without them knowing. Oh, it's even easier because they have a bench outside now. We didn't even have a bench back then, and I was smaller.
You were tiny, I think, probably. Oh my.
It's not hard at all.
That's it, he's out. And he's off to find a computer.
Yeah, that way.
Wow, that's amazing.
And the bus would run by this house, actually. But then at night after 10, the bus wouldn't run by this house. And so you'd have to go over, there's a children's hospital, it's about 10 blocks away. And that bus stop, they run 24 hours a day because people are coming to work at the hospital. Anyway, so I'd have to walk just a little bit further.
The information age will really take place within this next decade, and it will transform the economy as much as the industrial age.
Your story is about the wonder of computers, the fun you had learning to code. And today, when we talk about kids and tech, it tends to be, there's a lot of angst about it and concerns about what they're exposed to. Would you take a view on what age your grandchild, for example, could have access to social media?
Well, I think this idea of holding kids back until, say, age 16, which, apparently Australia is going to try to do that. I think it'll be fascinating to see if that's beneficial. I think there's a good chance that that's a smart thing.
Are you worried about the concentration of power when it comes to social platforms that a handful of men have now?
I don't know how much power they have, but our politics, there's plenty to be concerned about because people are more polarized. Trust in institution has gone down somewhat. So I worry about politics. I don't think it's a mistake for tech people to talk to politicians about technology. In fact, that piece of it I'm big on.
So when you think now about what's happening with it looks like the sort of the Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musk obviously are courting Donald Trump, if you like, the new president. How do you perceive that?
I think Donald Trump should learn about what's going on in technology. I reached out and spent time with Donald Trump because he'll be making decisions about global health and how we help poor countries, which is a big focus of mine now, and I wanted to share with him how I thought about that.
So have you met him recently?
Yeah, I had dinner with him December 27th, in a long discussion. So I agree, talking to Donald Trump, if you, want the U.S. government to be your partner in saving lives or whatever, you're probably wise to take that opportunity.
So you're not cynical about their motives?
You can be cynical. When I started Microsoft, I had this crazy view that we didn't need to have an office in Washington, D.C. And I thought, well, isn't this amazing? We have a country where you can have a company that isn't involved in politics at all. I did that longer than I should have and came to regret it. So it's not necessarily a virtue to, completely ignore what's going on in politics.
Mark Zuckerberg has said that in the US they don't need fact checkers any longer. If someone was to post on Facebook complete untruths about a vaccine program that you fund, what do you think Mark Zuckerberg should do about it? Should he remove it, or do you think free speech trumps it?
Well, I'm certainly sad that in the COVID pandemic, there were deaths that wouldn't have occurred if people had sought out vaccines. And I think the online information, bears some responsibility for those deaths. How you divide between free speech and truth is sadly neither governments nor private companies am I that impressed at how you navigate that boundary. And I I don't personally know how you draw that line, but I'm worried that we're not handling that as well as we should.
Your mother and your grandmother told you that you should be philanthropic and that wealth brings great responsibility to give your money away, which you have done, you know, after Microsoft made you for many years the richest man in the world.
I still have more to give. I mean, I will give away, the vast majority of my money. It's my full-time focus for the rest of my life, and I enjoy it. It's, the Gates Foundation has attracted amazing people, amazing partners, and it's actually had way more impact than I would have dreamed of 25 years ago when it first got started.
I wonder does it make a material difference? When you are very rich, actually, do you notice a difference?
No, I've made no personal sacrifice. I didn't order less hamburgers or, less movies. There's always a decision about how much wealth you should leave your kids. And, the kids and I have talked a lot about that. And, we have a great understanding, which leaves the vast majority of the fortune for the foundation.
And obviously one of the main focuses of your foundation is vaccines, saving lives of children. But vaccine uptake, in fact, in the US is falling, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Do you attribute that to the spread of misinformation?
Oh, certainly. No, vaccines are always subject to misinformation. And the foundation works mostly in poor countries on this, and we often have rumors. In those countries, the infectious diseases are so prevalent that very quickly you start seeing measles deaths. And so there's a very good corrective to misinformation about vaccines in those countries because the measles is still out there, the kids are not well nourished, and sadly, you'll get hundreds of deaths and people will say, wow, we better go back to using this measles vaccine.
So do you think you might have to focus on the US?
Well, rich countries are very lucky that if they get lax, they don't immediately see an increase in deaths. Kids are very well nourished, so if you do get measles, your chance of death is actually quite low. Weirdly, the negative attitude towards vaccines in the US is causing more deaths because of how it influences the way people look at vaccines in other countries.
The Trump presidency might be about to make those attitudes even more influential. What does Gates think of Trump's first pick for Health Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whose views on vaccines have been controversial?
Well, he, in particular, says that I and Tony Fauci are involved with vaccines that are doing the opposite of what they really do. These vaccines are saving millions of lives. The reason the world has gotten annual child to death down from 10 million to 5 million since the turn of the century is largely because of vaccines. And so it's kind of unfortunate that this incredible progress, incredible news, 5 million deaths a year that aren't taking place, that did back in the year 2000, he is misleading people about that.
Did you talk to Donald Trump about that?
We'll see what happens. Reading a lot is a good habit I developed very young.
Back at Lakeside, we visit the library for a chance to riff on the Dewey Decimal System. The universal history of numbers.
I haven't read that one. That looks good.
Come on, you better take it out of this library.
Wow.
Not at this school, but at a previous school where it wasn't going that well, and a clever teacher sent you to the library, and you ended up getting very good at putting library books back and sort of filing.
I had a lot of energy, and they weren't sure how to help me to focus it. And so because I was checking a lot of books out of the library, the woman who ran the library kind of embraced me and said, oh, I need your help. And so I'd sit there and read, but when books would come back, I'd help place them on the shelf. The whole way that books are kind of categorized, was kind of Dewey Decimal System was interesting to me. So I hung out there quite a bit.
Well, you know what? This library also uses the Dewey Decimal System. I guess
Still.
maybe all libraries do. Does that mean that if you looked at this book and this number, would you know where it went?
Sure. I mean, it's a sequential numeric system. I mean, I would also know, what type of book, what the subject matter of the book is. Although, some areas have expanded so much, they have to use really long numbers. But yes, that was the original sort of book taxonomy.
So 513.2 means something to you.
It's a science book, yep.
Well,
This goes in nonfiction.
I mean, I'm impressed you just recognised it.
There we go.
And so it's 530, okay, yeah, because that only goes from 500s to 510s.
Yeah, so this here is the 510 to 520.
Right.
So it's in here.
Yeah. Amazing. That's amazing. Brilliant. When he was starting to get into computers, he was very young, but do you remember what you thought about it? Did you have any interest in them? You saw that he got excited about it. Was he talking about it? Was he telling you about them?
I mean, it's just like we were talking about things that didn't make any sense to me.
And did they make sense to your parents? Or was it you were in completely a different world from everybody else when it came to recognizing that this was something?
No, computers were not a normal thing, even for mom and dad. Now, when I'm doing business contracts, then dad's incredible sophistication, I got good advice from him at a number of key points. But they didn't understand computers. I got them an early personal computer for them to play with just so they'd have an sense of it. But by then I've been gone from the house quite some time.
We obviously learn a lot about you from the memoir, a lot about what young Bill Gates was like. Do you still pull off 36 hours without sleep?
No, I couldn't do it.
How about LSD?
No, because I like my brain to be working well, the fact that while you're on it or maybe even afterwards, it's not good for your brain function. That was a brief dalliance that I gave up.
Because I was interested, because I think Steve Jobs said that actually it fueled his creativity. That wasn't the case for you.
Well, who knows? I mean, he once said that, maybe I would have understood design like he did if I had done LSD. So, clearly the batch I didn't have that feature.
You did all right without it. And this is one obviously related to your feeling that you're neurodiverse, because you talk a lot in the book about rocking, that you had this rocking. Do you still do that?
Yeah, sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. And so people point it out to me because it can bother them, but no, I haven't grown out of that. Maybe I will.
And if you had to finish this sentence, Bill Gates is, what would you say?
Is an innovator, is a father, is a philanthropist.
Bill Gates, thank you very much for doing this interview.
Thank you.